We hadn't met before tonight. I think I was able to greet all of you on the way in. I'm Lisa, I'm Christina's daughter, and I am here to introduce the author, AKA Mom. She's told me repeatedly to keep it short. I decided to keep it relevant, albeit thorough. And I did time it, and it's under 5 minutes. I'm going to do it using the work of my brother James, however, who is not physically here, but he's been a driving force in the planning and execution of the event through the brand new website and landing page he created for Mom. He's probably even watching the live stream now. Please make sure you take a minute and check out his work at ChristinaAbt.com. It's really good, probably because he does it for a living, yes. And he loves his mom. So about Christina. On any given day, Christina can be found enjoying life as a mom, nana, community volunteer, political consultant, media strategist, theater performer, public speaker, journalist, and/or author. However, the essential element that threads through Christina's world is her passion for storytelling. She began sharing stories as a child, often to the chagrin of those whose tales she revealed. Eventually, her storytelling evolved into grade school essays and high school newspaper assignments that encouraged her writer's soul to bloom. Eventually, Christina honed her writing skills as a newspaper feature writer and editor for New Jersey's Ridgewood News. There she was mentored by the renowned sports columnist and author Joe King, who taught her the essential value of getting to the true heart of the stories she told. While raising her family, Christina became a feature writer for a series of equine publications and launched her 15-year career as the Hamburg Sun newspaper's heart and soul op-ed columnist. In short order, her opinion pieces became featured in national book anthologies and on Buffalo's NPR station WBFO. Eventually, Christina became a regular commentator and special reporter for BFO and advanced to hosting her own talk show radio on Buffalo.FM. In 1995, Christina moved into a hilltop farmhouse named Crown Hill. Immediately, she began transforming the 150-year-old house into her home, a 20-year renovation project highlighted by a series of intriguing Crown Hill tales shared with Christina in unique and haunting ways. Ultimately, the inspired storyteller wove those tales into her inaugural book of fiction, Crown Hill, a novel of love, life, and the afterlife. Upon publication in 2014, Christina and the characters she created traveled across the United States, sharing the Crown Hill journey with book lovers of all ages. Is she squirming yet? A little bit? A little bit? Energized by Crown Hill's popularity, Christina decided to blend a collection of her heart and soul op-ed columns and radio commentaries into a book by the same name. Published in 2015, the essays cover the tried and true topics of family, parenting, love, home, and holidays, along with the more broad-based themes of sports, careers, community, politics, and women's issues. It was at this point that Christina pursued her life dream of traveling across the United States and, in fact, the world. Is this the parties that are what? Interviewing people along the way. You know that's Adrienne. What resulted was a project of 52 interviews, which she filmed, edited, and produced on her YouTube channel in the 52 weeks between her 64th and 65th birthdays. Christina titled the series 64 and More. Her interview subjects ran the gamut from the famous Broadway legend Tommy Tune, international businessman Herbert V. Kohler, world-renowned conductor Joanne Falletta, and Food Network star Reva Alexander Hawk, to men and women less recognizable but equally inspirational in their lives well lived. In the midst of 64 and More, Christina met a fellow Western New York author by the name of Mary Jo Hodge. Mary Jo shared with Christina stories from her early career as a nurse. The details of Mary Jo's story haunted Christina and led to months of online research, reading, and visits to American institutions and asylums. Ultimately, she began a 2-year writing odyssey that resulted in her second historical fiction novel titled Beauty and Grace. As Christina launches Beauty and Grace, she continues to tell stories on her blog, on her Facebook page, and in several new writing projects, including a one-woman play. No matter the form, Christina's writing purpose always remains the same: to touch readers' hearts and souls and create a legacy of storytelling that makes a difference and makes her children and grandchildren proud. Indeed, she has, she does, and she will. So I'm very proud to introduce the author of Beauty and Grace, Christina Abt.
Okay, that was a lot. It's always a bit nerve-wracking when your kid introduces you, right? But for all the years that Lisa has so graciously done these honors, every introduction has been a special moment. So thank you, Lisa, for your love and support and for being disobedient. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge my crew of faithful friends who, from political campaigns to book launches, show up. Okay. Molly McLaughlin, who sat at the table tonight and welcomed you. Bob Reynolds, who comes and whatever needs to be done, directs traffic, whatever needs to be done. Mark Odian, who comes and videos and live streams things whenever we need them and chases around stories when I beg him to do things without getting paid, and we keep doing these videos. And then there's a newbie with us tonight. It's our photographer, Chris, who, you know, it's your first time with the crew, so welcome, but know that you're now a member and you're done. This is it. You will be responsible for every event that we do from here on in. Yeah, right. Ask them, they'll tell you. At the same time, I also want to acknowledge Bennett Christopher and Ella Rose. There you are. Hi, Ella Rose. My grandchildren trainees who are learning how to carry on in our crazy family traditions. Nana loves you. Okay, so I would like to also ask all of you to help me thank, see right there, the incomparable guitarist, composer, and Buffalo Music Hall of Famer, Alan Sims, for elevating this evening with his beautiful music. Alan, thank you. This is the second book signing that Alan has played at, a launch for me, and I have to tell you, it gets to be a pretty special event when Rick James's guitarist is in the house. So thank you. I also want to thank Kara Kane, Director of Conference Services for Daemen, for her patience in planning tonight's event, as well as the Daemen culinary staff for the delicious foods we're enjoying and this beautiful, beautiful facility. I just love this room. I think it's so gorgeous. So I hope you're enjoying your time here tonight. I also want to welcome the family and friends who are joining us through the magic of the live feed. And while you may not be here in this room, I know I can feel that you're here with us tonight. And to each and every one of you who came tonight in support of this book and to celebrate this launch, thank you for your support of my work and of this special story. Beauty and Grace. It's almost unbelievable to me that we are gathered here tonight to launch this book. For me, it's a journey that began 3 years ago. I am just like getting signals from the back of the room from the daughter who is just like, okay, I get it. Okay, so it began 3 years ago, as Lisa referenced, from a fellow journalist named Mary Jo Hodge. Some of you may know her. She's a journalist from Eden, New York. And she asked me to meet with her and talk about marketing her books. That conversation led to a story Mary Jo shared that day about the nurses that she'd worked with at Gowanda State Hospital, where she was Director of Education and Training and later the Chief of Mental Health Treatment Services. As I recall the details that Mary Jo shared with me that day, she talked about the nurses there who had been on staff and their experiences in the time that they were there for 30, 40 years, including caring for women who had immigrated to America, unmarried, and not meeting a man when they arrived at Ellis Island. Due to their single status, American immigration officials deemed them a financial liability. And because of that, they were immediately institutionalized, despite being of sound mind and body. As Mary Jo continued this story, she explained that if women such as these had no visitors over a prolonged period of time, they were shipped upstate to mental institutions like Gowanda, where no one had any idea who they were or where they came from. And so they slipped through the cracks, forgotten, and left to struggle within the confines of mental asylums until they died. The thought of women enduring such tragedies simply because they dreamed of an independent life haunted me for months after that conversation with Mary Jo. And every time I thought I filed it away in my memory bank, a spark would inflame it again within my writer's soul. Finally, I went back to Mary Jo, and I asked her permission to write the story. Graciously, she agreed, saying that it needed to be told by many people. What I didn't realize at the time was that getting Mary Jo's permission was the easy part. For the rest of 2015, I wrestled with how to begin wrangling the complex and disturbing story into a format that would do justice to those who endured such unreasonable treatments while appealing to readers. With nothing but a strong sense of purpose and a short list of nurses' names from Mary Jo, I began researching stories of immigrant women in such circumstances. No matter where or how I searched, I could not find any documentation of those stories. And as the historian at the Buffalo History Museum once told me, if it's not written, it didn't happen. So, however, I did find an extensive information about the reasons that people were committed to asylums. Some of my favorites: melancholy after a miscarriage, political excitement. We'd all be committed right now. Religious enthusiasm, uterine derangement, imaginary female troubles, your parents were first cousins, and this one is my favorite because it's so evocative, a soldier's heart. In continuing my research, I found that spouses used lunacy laws to rid themselves of their partners and to abduct their children. Many times, all they needed was a letter from their parish priest or their doctor to be able to lock away the person that they wanted to get rid of. Ultimately, as my research efforts to find Mary Jo's nursing context continued, and I hit dead ends every time, I turned to the source of all worldly wisdom, Facebook. There I connected with a woman who I'd met at one of my Crown Hill presentations. And I don't know, Becky, are you here tonight? Becky Harbison? She bought a book, but I don't think she came. But anyway, we met at a Crown Hill presentation, and she answered my Facebook call about trying to locate a directory of New York State nurses who worked in state institutions between the 1950s to the 1970s. While she didn't provide me that information, she Sherlocked the nurses and delivered me contact info for two of them. Now, these are two of the nurses that Mary Jo Hodge worked with. Buoyed by this information, I called the phone numbers only to find out that one of the nurses had passed and the other was no longer able to remember. It was at this point that Facebook once again intervened in the form of a comment from a woman I did not know, but who had seen my interaction with Becky. Ultimately, that comment led me to a book. The premise of the book was founded in the attic of one of our nation's most well-known mental institutions, the Willard Asylum for the Criminally Insane, located in Willard, New York, near Seneca Lake. Willard was opened in 1869 to help manage the overcrowding in our nation's alm and poorhouses. Their mission was to provide a better alternative to the torturous treatments that were being administered in these institutions at the time. Willard remained open for almost 130 years until Geraldo Rivera's expose on the deplorable conditions and treatments in New York State's Willowbrook. Some of you may remember that. It brought about a steep decline in people being institutionalized, and so Willard closed in 1995. But the Willard story didn't end there. As the state worked to close the facility, a nurse who had worked there for many years talked about an attic in a nearby rundown shed that she remembered being filled with suitcases. Suitcases from people that had been institutionalized there. And when they came with suitcases of the things that were most important, the possessions that meant the most to them. So some of these suitcases had pots and pans in them, some of them had bits and pieces of material, some of them had journals, some of them had pictures. Every one was different, depending on what the individual person meant the most to them when they were sent away and taken away from their life. Upon investigating, those in charge found hundreds of these suitcases filled with the possessions that each person valued the most. Eventually, a book about the suitcases was written by Darby Penny and Peter Stasny with photos by Lisa Rinsler, titled The Lives They Left Behind. This book highlighted 10 of the more than 400 rediscovered suitcases in words and images, each story telling and illustrating the life of those 10 people and the possessions that they valued so dearly. It was in reading this book that beauty and grace came alive in my writer's heart and soul. For the first time, I was able to learn something more than statistics and medical descriptions. I was able to know names and life circumstances of real people who'd been locked away for most of their lives. And so it was from that knowledge that I laid out the ideal of beauty and grace. Initially, I envisioned a book of 40 chapters with 10 patient characters, one of whom would be a co-narrator, along with a senior care consultant character who would share the narration storyline. The reality, when I finished the last word on the final page, was a book of 55 chapters, 15 patient characters, and an assortment of secondary characters that aid my two narrators in telling the 146,000-word story. Lest you think that this book is all darkness and sadness, there are a host of characters who bring love and light to this storyline. And as always, if you've been a Crown Hill fan, there are lots of good food moments that will drive you to the kitchen while you're reading. What I also found interesting about this book, and did not realize until recently, is that the Woodhaven Asylum, which is the name of the asylum in this book, plays a strong role in the storyline. For fans of Crown Hill, that won't come as a surprise that a building plays a strong role, but it was not intentional as I wrote it, and I had no idea until I was done. Lastly, I want to share with you a bit about the 15 women and men you are about to meet between the covers of the book you have come to celebrate tonight. Imagining and creating them was one of the hardest writing tasks I have ever tackled. And one of the things I didn't do when I started was to acknowledge someone in this room who helped me through this book and has helped me through my writing career, and that's one of my test readers, and she's Marion Schmidt. And with this book, she was right there every step of the way because it was that complex and complicated, and she never came back and said, wow, that was terrible. She would just say, well, you know, it was good, but maybe it could be a little less repetitive. Okay, that's good, I can take that. So the lives of these characters were damaged and in some cases destroyed by life circumstances that banished and trapped them behind the Woodhaven Asylum walls. Imagine for a moment a world where there is little light or fresh air, where there are no clocks, no calendars, no point of reference to the outside world, or even a mirror to witness your own aging process. Imagine a place where your value as a human being is worthless, your physical and mental needs never considered, only controlled, where the only variation in your days come in the form of others being forced to join you or being dragged away from you in terror, where the only human touch you feel comes in the form of medical punishments masquerading as treatments. This is the place I've lived for the last 2 years, and intensely for the first 4 months of this year as I wrote, edited, and completed Beauty and Grace. There were mornings when I did not want to get out of bed and write, didn't want to go back behind those asylum walls. Yet at the end of the day, the women and men of my Beauty and Grace imaginings touched my heart and inspired me in the ways they fought against the asylum cruelties and formed friendships that helped them to survive. When ultimately they took those final steps outside of the Woodhaven Asylum, gates, the moment became a true celebration of the human spirit for me. I am most grateful for all of you who've come tonight to celebrate this and help give life to beauty and grace. And I now, oh so gently, release these amazing collection of characters into your readers' care. Enjoy them, suffer with them, celebrate them, and most of all, remember the life lesson that they teach us, that the need for effective mental health care is necessary and essential to the well-being of all of us. And if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to talk to you about the book or anything you would like to know about it, because I know that was a lot. It was a lot to write, trust me. So does anybody have any questions or want to know anything about the book? Oh, Roz, it's not going to be, there's a lot of lightness in it. It's not as dark as it sounds. Chris?
Is there anything other than awareness of mental illness that you'd like to see come of the book?
The question was, is there anything I'd like to see other than awareness of mental illness come of the book? Yeah, I want to be a New York Times bestseller author and get real rich. Thanks for setting me up, honey. Again, when I wrote the book, I wrote each character. There wasn't an overview for me. It was, who are these people? How can I imagine them? Where did they come from? What's their experience like? And Tegan is the young girl who starts in Ireland, and you meet her first. And this was in here. We didn't get all the notes done. Anyway, she starts in Ireland, Queenston, County Cork. And she's 16, and she has a wanderlust to go across the ocean and become an artist in America. So you meet her as she takes these steps to come to America. That's the introduction. Chapter 1, you meet a woman named Grace Reed. She is a born and bred Buffalo gal who just happened to graduate from Rosary Hill College, which is why we're here tonight. And she has become a specialist in senior care. And she's been so good that she's become a national consultant. And that's why the executive director of Woodhaven in New Jersey, this asylum, they have been mandated to deinstitutionalize. There are 10 seniors that are still alive there, have been there for up to 50 years, and they've been told by the government they have to take them out. They can't stay there any longer. And they can't find anyone with any qualifications to do it. So they go to Grace, and she's like, I don't do this. I do the fox run at Orchard Park kind of thing. But they send her the case studies of the 10, and she can't leave. She can't leave them. She has to help them. And so then each chapter goes back and forth between the people in the asylum that you meet through Tegan. She is your guide. She tells you who everyone is. And then Grace, who then is trying to help them move forward in ways that they don't understand, and sometimes they don't even want to do because they're so frightened. They have not been outside the walls of this asylum in as much as 50 years. So to say, look, go fly, little bird, they're like, oh, no thanks, I'll stay right here. So, it was compelling. And I will tell you, I did go down to Willard, and it was a very moving experience. But the best thing that happened to me down there was I met a nurse who had been a nurse at Willard when it was an asylum. And it was very affirming. And there's a nurse in this book that is modeled after this woman. Because when I sat down and told her what I was trying to write, and I asked what she could tell me, and she said, yes, the things you're telling me about the heinous treatment and all that, she said, yes, absolutely. She said, but I will tell you, it depends on who was in charge. She said, on my floor, in my wing, people were fed well. They were treated well. They were never abused. And I would never have known that if I had not met this woman, and I would have written a very one-sided book. And I'm so grateful because there's a beautiful nurse in this book, and she's everything that this woman, proposed that she was when she worked there. And as Marion taught, because Marion has been a social worker, and there is a very strong redemptive message in this at the end as these women and man come together and do move on to new lives in ways they never imagined would ever happen again. Sandy.
In your research, did you find that a language barrier was ever a reason for them to be put away?
There were so many things that happened. If they couldn't understand you, that's one of the things that I found in immigrating here and going through Ellis Island. You lined up, and there were just all these guys inspectors across a big table like this, and you had to come through and pass through them as immigrants. And if they didn't know your language, you could get sent back. I mean, it was just that simple. You know, if you couldn't communicate, they weren't going to let you stay. Now, it didn't always happen that way, but I mean, those were realities. And one of the things, and again, I took real stories, like the suitcases that I told you about. Okay, there's a whole suitcase part in this book, because that's what helps me suspend your disbelief as a reader, because I'm giving you things that really happened, and I know what happened, and I can have a lot of confidence in creating that part of it, and you'll buy into it. But one of the things that they talked about when people emigrated, families would come, they'd have small babies. Babies would get sick. It was a terrible trip over. The people who were the Irish and some of the Italian immigrants, they were down in steerage class. There was nothing but a lot of dirt and no air, and it wasn't good. And the babies a lot of times would come off the ship ill. And the inspectors would make the family stand there and decide, the baby can't stay. So who's staying and who's going? And you'd watch a family have to part. And, you know, let's come current to right now what's happening in this nation. Not so different. So I promise you there's redemptive parts to it. There's a lovely love story, of course. So that's good. You'll enjoy that part. There's always some quirky characters that will make you smile. There's a great bar, a gin mill, as my mom would have called it, with greasy fries and burgers. You know, like there's all that in there. So I allow you places to breathe where you'll enjoy it, I hope. Marion.
Christina, because it presents as such a dark novel, one of the things that so impressed me was that these people become family. They become family for one another. They grow bonds that are so strong. That's how they survive this, and it's how they move on. They move on with one another. They protect one another. And that's such a beautiful part of the story, is what they can do for one another.
Yeah, and they're all different ethnicities. There's Irish, there's German. I'm not going to be able to think of it now because there's 15 of them, but French, there's a French woman, Emile. So they're all different ethnicities, and they bond, you know, even though they don't always speak language that they each other understand. There's a real a way of living in this facility that is quickly communicated. Because if you don't, you're chained or you're put in a cage, or, you know, those things happen. So you try to help the people as they come in the door. And the nice thing about Tegan is she evolves. She comes in and she's being punished for it. And she starts to learn and how. And then she starts to help the new people who come in after her, saying, listen, this won't work. I get it, but you're going to be sorry if you keep this up. So, as does Grace, yeah. No, and Grace and Tegan bond. Grace and Tegan become the glue that helps these 10 people evolve and be able to go on. 4 of them go to a care facility, and the 6 go to a real place, a real house.
Okay, so I know you'd be very involved in these.
I do.
I know. We get involved in them, and when we get done reading, it's like our family has left or whatever. Now, you worked on this for 2 years. Are you back emotionally yet, or are you still trying to reset yourself to get back to normal?
Every time I write something about this book, it's very challenging to me. I did not like writing this book. I like the book, don't get me wrong, and I'm glad I did it, but it was so painfully hard. I'm not that, I mean, for anybody who read my columns, you know, it's all, you know, Mary Poppins and whatever. So this book was hard for me, and I'm serious. There were mornings when I just laid in bed and said, I'm not writing this. And I remember one day on Facebook saying, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, I felt a real responsibility. And there are 12 women and 3 men. So I was glad for that. Like, at first it was going to be all women, and then it was like, well, no, wait. Men were incarcerated and institutionalized as well. This needs to be fair. This needs to be interesting on all levels. So when I finished it finally and sent it off to my editor, who, anybody who's Crown Hill, Holly was my editor last time. Holly's too busy now. She's a top Kindle Amazon writer now. So her stepdaughter edited this book for me, which is kind of cool. We're keeping the tradition of the family going. But yeah, I finished it and sent it off to be edited, and probably cried for the better part of 2 days because I missed them. When I got up in the morning, even though I hated them, kind of like your kids, you know? Like, oh my God, thank God they went to bed. And then when you get up in the morning, it's like, oh, I've missed you so much, right? So yeah, it felt like that. I missed them. And I missed helping them. I missed helping them because everything you read is fiction. Everything came from my imagination. So when they got worse, it was my fault. When they got better, I did it right, you know? So that was really interesting. And the editor came back and she had a lot of changes she wanted done, and I was grateful for that too. Because you're in such a silo. You can't even begin to figure out what works and what doesn't. So people like test readers are very helpful, and your editor, if they're a good editor, helps. So yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, I'm having a pretty fun life these days, so it's a lot easier to be back. Roz.
You were just talking about test readers and you're a test reader. How do you get that distinction?
To become a friend, and the first time I was sick, so I had a lot of time. And then what she did it the first time, she said, oh, well, I got you again.
No, now that's not really the truth. That is so not the truth. She's just not. So when I wrote...
Is she associated with the publishing house?
No.
Oh,
First
okay.
of all, Marion's in 3 book clubs, so right away I know she's a reader, right?
Okay.
But then when I wrote Crown Hill, I didn't know. Is anybody going to like this book? So I gave it to her, and people read it, and then I just kind of let it go. And she said, come on, we're going to breakfast. I said, okay. So we go to breakfast, and we sit down, and she said, I'm telling you right now that it will be a shame if people don't have the opportunity to read this book. Okay, you get me. Like it's something, you want people who have a different opinion, but you want people who support you as who you are as a writer. And Marion has supported me as a writer from years. And the other people, I have them in different ages, like people in their 20s up to 60s, men and women. It's not, if you want to read next time, Roz, I'll put you on the list. But you have to, I mean, there's things you have to do. It's not easy.
I was going to say, that sounds like a great responsibility, and I'm not joking about it.
It is. It really is. Because if you come back and don't help me, then the book doesn't work. Like, I rely on you to do that. Hi, Gretch. Any other question? Big guy.
How you doing today?
I'm much better now that you asked. Okay.
You know, and obviously we've talked through the book, but I really wanted to take a look at the historical perspective, that it could be used possibly to open up the minds of people what happened in the past.
Yep.
Do you think that it has that much historical perception on that for people to look at it? Even, you know, in our college education, where they get into mental health and stuff like that, do you think it would open up that? Because we probably never studied that part of the history that well.
I think that I am not a historian. That's the really important part. Like, I'm not the detail person. I'll get the overall, and I'll have someone make sure I get the details right, but I'm the storyteller. But I think what I do bring to the table is I will tell a story that will engage people that would otherwise be bored by the history, to the point that they might then want to move on and know more. And I think that's where it can serve value. And everything in here is researched. It's just not about a specific place or specific people. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when I wrote the afterword, so I don't write forwards because I have no filter, and I'll tell you everything about the book in the foreword, and like, why read it, right? So I do afterwards, and I'll tell you after why it was written or what happened. And one of the things I wrote, and I did not plan to write it, was about mental health in our world, in our country, and how we're so underserving people who have mental health needs, that it's not a shameful thing, that we need to start looking at it just as we treat our bodies, we need to treat our minds. And we don't think about it, and it's shameful, you know, that you don't tell, like, you know, I remember those days with your grandmother, whatever, if my grandfather had electrotherapy on the, whatever it is, on Elmwood. It's not Richardson. Yeah, thank you. So, you know, and nobody talked about it. Why? How is it different than having surgery on your body? So, yeah, I mean, if it helps that, then I think if it advances the discussion, I think fiction has a way of engaging people and advancing the discussion. It might not be completely factual, you know, based on, but I think it helps, because a lot of people, history's too dry. Just saying.
History guy, remember?
Yeah. So, but for me, you know, so that's
That's good.
That's what I'm saying.
Anna has a question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
God, I would never have seen it. From teacher to teacher is what we're talking right there. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any relationship to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center?
No,
Um,
no. I stayed away from everybody because you're going to get sued,
Yeah.
right? We did the author photo shoot at Richardson, and they allowed us to do that. And then I went back and said, can we do the launch there? And they said no. Like, they're happy to celebrate it, but they don't want to highlight it. And that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. People won't want to go, that's a little too much, I think.
Yeah.
But I asked. Yeah, no, it's not, there's no Woodhaven institution. I really tried. That's the one thing you learn in writing historical fiction. You stay away from the truth in that way because somebody's going to take everything you got. Gretchen.
My husband's uncle's grandmother was in Willard.
No.
Yeah, they came here. They live in Colorado now. They've been all over the country. Yeah. And they came like 3 or 4 years ago when that attic book came out.
Yeah.
Took us from the attic to see the disability,
Right, the Disability Museum just down the street here has a whole display on it. So do they talk about it, Gretchen? Did they ever tell you anything about it?
He said he thought it was his grandmother, but he thought she was in for postpartum depression.
Yep. And the interesting thing about women that were treated that way was that they would come in and go out, right? They didn't stay the whole time. So they'd come in and get better, and then go home and never break the real cycle of depression. And so then all the kids are still there and everything's still hard. And then, a year or two later, you're right back in there again. So, some husbands were fair and kind and loving and really tried to help, but others were just glad to get rid of them. And that sounds terrible, but that was the reality. Yes, sir.
So fully realizing what you put into this and how hard it was to go through the last 2 years, 2+ years to get to this wonderful book.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can, and this is sort of off topic, so anything you can share with these loyal followers of yours, what might be the next?
Yeah, so I can just tell you, so I have a book at home that I started a few years ago, and it's about a guy who loses his job, and so the only thing he can find on short term is to be hired by this company who pays guys to go online and hit on women on dating websites, like create all these crazy profiles, do like 25 profiles, and just keep pulling in women every time, right? And so he does all this stuff, and these women respond to him, and he never meets them, but he draws them in and gets them to do whatever this company wants him to do. Give us your email address, it's not really invasive, it's not too nasty, but it's enough that he's, But then there's this woman who's lost her husband, and she's very lonely, and her family, is kids, friends, whatever, told her, come on, try it. How bad can it be? So she tries online dating, and of course he hooks up with her like 5 times because he keeps creating these profiles and she keeps liking them, but he becomes intrigued by her. And so he finally does his own profile, and they meet and they develop a relationship, but then she finds out that he also has been playing her on the other side. How's that story go for you?
Inquiring mind.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Someone online is asking for, is it possible that we'll get a small sample reading so we can get a sense of the prose style?
Who's asking that?
True believer.
I mean, if you'd like, do you want me to read you something? I'll read you the introduction. How's that? Because it's short. So the introduction is Tegan. And thank you. And the thing you have to know is who's true believer? True believer needs to identify themselves? No, we're past that now. We don't care. So when people are a nationality, they're in dialect. So Tegan speaks in Irish through the whole book. So if you don't like that, you're not going to get very far. Just saying. It's not bad. It's not bad. Maybe. Yeah, this is good. June 25th, 1928. The morning air lay thick with layered odors of fish, seaweed, and bilge seeping from nearby moored ships. The briny smells weaved into every bit of me life growing up in the oceanside village of Queenston, County Cork. Me family's heritage was woven through a long line of Irish seafarers, tracing back to the 1st century life of St. Brendan the Navigator. As me da was forever saying, never forget me darling girl, salt water runs through your veins. Truth be told, I was always looking for ways to be on the docks, whether bringing lunch to me da at his shipyard job, skipping school for me passion of painting seascapes along the rocky seaport coast, or escaping me bed for midnight communion with the endless shoreline of stars. Me soul was always being pulled by the tides. 'Twas me deepest dream to one day cross the ocean to America. Not that I was wanting to leave behind me family, mind ya. More, I was wishing to follow the path of Bridget O'Hanlon, the sister of me best friend, Margaret Mary. Bridget was a poet, celebrated within Queenston for her work oft-published in the Church Bulletin and every now and then in the Examiner newspaper. Everyone said she was born to follow in the footsteps of Cork's own Mary Ellen Patrick Downing, whose poems were featured in Dublin's Irish nationalist newspaper. Oh, but Bridget had a greater dream, one she shared with me and Mary Margaret on a Sunday after our families had come home from Mass. Truth be told, Bridget didn't exactly mean to be sharing her dreams. 'Twas only on account of me and Margaret Mary coming upon her and Patrick Mahoney kissing in the alley behind where we lived. We was always being a thorn in Bridget's side, sneaking around and spying on her. We did it 'cause she always give us something good to keep us from telling what we knew. No doubt the kiss was big news, and me and Margaret Mary was beyond excited or what treasure Bridget might be offering. I've not a sweet nor a nickel to be giving the two of you little devils, and I've not a care whether you be telling anyone about me and Patrick. It makes no matter, as I've got me bag right here, and the two of us are leaving straight away for America. A newspaper editor there wants to hire me to write, and that's just what I'm going to do. But if you promise not to tell till I'm gone, you can have this lace handkerchief that Nanny embroidered for me. Pushing the delicate linen and lace square into me hand, Bridget gave a quick kiss and a hug of her sister, and off she went. Margaret Mary started bawling on the spot, so as I give her the hanky to dry her face and wipe her nose. 'Twas only a few minutes before her temper replaced her tears. I'll only have to share a bed with one sister now, so good riddance. She was nothing but trouble around here anyhow. Seeing how Margaret Mary wasn't of a mind to tattle, I asked if she wanted to sneak off to the harbor to watch Bridget board the ship. I was hoping to do the same one day, so as I could become a famous painter in America. The thing was, I was in need of a bit of courage. Me hope was in watching someone else take the steps, I'd be able to do the same. So as off we went and watched, and we made a pact to never tell all we knew about Bridget kissing on her leaving. As for me, I made me own pact that come a year's time, I'd be boarding a ship, leaving behind Ireland's green shores for America's gold-paved streets. As fate would have it, in a few months' time, a handbill posted on the white fence surrounding the shipyard was posted. I first noted the artwork across the top. 'Twas a design I knew by heart. The red flag with a white star belonged in one of the finest shipping lines in the world. Yet the bold words below was what I really cared about. RMS Olympic sails to America. Being the daughter of a shipbuilder, I knew the names and histories of most vessels come to port. The Olympic was the sister ship of the Titanic. Itself sailed from Queenston, April 10th, 1912, never to return. Ever since, no matter when the Olympic come to port, I was sure to be there to see it. 'Twas a never-ending thrill to watch the grand ship glide into the harbor and watch the wealthy first-class passengers and steerage-class Irish being ferried onto her gangplank. When I saw the list of sailing dates on the handbill, I set me heart on the final one and went to making a plan. I started work sweeping floors at O'Brien's Market and keeping every bit of me wages in a leather satchel hid 'neath the mattress I shared with me 3 sisters. As months passed, I saved enough for me ticket and the new berthie I'd be needing from a bootlegger along the docks. As being only 16, Irish immigration deemed me not legal to be traveling on me own. I also went to squirreling away a bit of food from the larder each week and packing a small satchel so's Mam didn't miss a few of me clothes here and there on wash days. I made sure as well to pack up me rosary, me drawing pad and pencils, and me best sketch of the harbor, so's I'd never forget from where I come. As the time for leaving drew near, the excitement of starting a new life began bubbling up within me. I knew the only way to ever leave me family would be without word or hug. But still, I needed to tell someone before I burst. Margaret Mary was me only choice. Are you daft, girl? You're not but 16 and certainly not smart enough to go off on your own. At least Bridget had the good sense to sail away with Patrick, and knowing that when she got to America, she had a job. I'll tell you straight, from what Patrick's family is hearing, life in America ain't the crack. In fact, I heard Patrick Daw telling that there's people dying going across the ocean in them lower parts of the ships. Irish like us are being crowded right next to one another, another in small spaces, all of them sweaty and smelly, no better than animals. And mind ya, if they manage to survive the voyage, they're being forced to go to work in buildings with little light and not enough air to breathe for most all hours in a day. And another thing about going on your own, what's to keep you safe from any harm? Margaret Mary's words flared me temper. They also left me thinking about going away from the only life I'd known, and maybe never returning. Just the same, I knew me heart was driven by waves of wanderlust, surely the same that sent me granddad on worldly sailing adventures at 13 years. No matter the fears and homebound pleas of me heart, 'twas no denying the call of the tides on me soul. So 'twas one foggy morning, disguised in me brother Quinn's clothes and me Daw's woolen cap that I stole off a hook as I left out the back door. I made me way up the Olympics gangplank as 18-year-old Taylor Egan. Mam often told the story of me birth and how Daw straightaway named me Tegan, the Irish word for beauty. Not wanting to ever lose that connection, I heard tell of American school teacher Annie Edison Taylor, first woman to go over the world's natural wonder of Niagara Falls in a barrel. Her story made me mind up to take away the T from me name for Taylor and leave Egan for the rest. As I made me way down the shift stairs to 3rd class, I managed to weave me way into a small space of a bunk bed among 5 women and their 6 babies. Gathering me satchel up close to me chest, I shut me eyes and dreamed of all that lie ahead. And as I did, I whispered a prayer to Mary, Mother of God, that me new life in America not end up in a place with little light and not enough air, and where I be forced to be for all the rest of me days. So, hopefully that didn't discourage you. Let's see, it's a little hard, but. So, that's Tegan, and now you know where beauty and grace comes from, because Tegan in Irish means grace. So it gets better as you get more involved and learn more and you'll become ingrained with them. But I hope, feedback's always welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Bennett and Ellis. So if you weren't sure what this ticket was for, whoever we pull out gets 6 books, and then I will come, we'd get 6 people, whoever you want, and I'll come and we'll do a talk back, wherever you want. Go right ahead, big guy. You better pick the right one, though. There's a lot of people looking at you. Let Ella read it. How's that?
228243.
Is that Vicki and John?
No, it's me.
It is not.
Okay. All right,
The baseball
I'll put mine
team.
back.
The baseball team.
I'll put mine
You put him back? All right. Try again.
Not that he doesn't love you, Nana.
No. Well, I told him we'll do the baseball team. He's like, yeah, I don't think so. Let Ella read it.
228266.
Seriously, no one? It gotta be. Okay.
No, draw again.
You sure? Oh, I'm not sure. I think I might be insulted by that.
228265.
Yay, Gretchen, I'm so glad. So, you and 5 friends, or Kate, and whoever, and just let me know when you want to do it. You're welcome, thank you.
Real quick at the end, if you didn't get a chance to sign this, you can do it after we present it, but we've tried to do this at all of Mom's book launches, a nice copy of the cover, and everyone's signatures.
That's so nice, thank you, thank you, thank you. So there's cake and coffee, so please come and enjoy the cake. And thank you again for coming. Good job, Mark, thank you. And whoever, bye everybody.